Welcome to a simple but hopefully comprehensive introduction to Shadowlands PvP, where I want to cover most of the mistakes that many people make, especially those that are kinda new to PvP in general, or at least to the shenanigans of Shadowlands. May it be in battlegrounds, skirmishes, or especially rated arenas that will heavily decrease your death count if you take this topic to your heart and remember that it's actually the most important thing right now. Your defensive cooldowns or walls, or how you wanna call it. Walls or defensive cooldowns are those abilities each job or spec has access to that will decrease, mitigate, avoid or reflect damage in any way that is naturally useful to avoid being one-shot. And please note that this is the most important factor to survive each spec's initial burst damage. That has become a distributing element to surpass the first hard moments of stepping into the arena, for example. So let us break down the essentials you should know. In this category there are many different defensive cooldowns that are sometimes stronger, like Divine Shield, that makes you invulnerable against all incoming attacks, which can be dispelled by priests or warriors for example. On the other hand, we have small ones like mitigating incoming damage by 20%, that can still make the difference between life and death. Surely there are some special ones like Touch of Karma that redirects incoming damage to the target on which the Windwalker monk is using it, but that is capped by 50% of its max HP. Which can easily be devoured in a blink of an eye through the massive burst that Shadowlands introduced. Or Pain Suppression, that is a heavy damage dampener that can also be used when you're stunned, helping a lot against rogues, monks or warriors as a priest. Apart from that, we also have defensives that only focus on a specific type of damage, like Diffuse Magic or Focus Will. And these are just small examples that I have on my main character so far. But note, all specs and jobs except the ones not designed with PvP in mind or those that are horribly balanced have access to those skills, so check your spellbook and try getting used with these spells and place them onto a good spot of your hotbar, preferably on a hotkey you can use with your keyboard or your MMO mouse. But after these basic explanations, let us come to the common mistakes and how to avoid them. The first mistake is that many players are heavily overwhelmed by the massive amount of incoming damage when experienced players push out their offensive cooldowns, and when you realize that you're getting hit by a big crit, it may already be too late to react to this. Surely, if you're talking about a Retribution Paladin with 38k life popping wings onto a new player with 20 or 25k life, this is very difficult to survive at all, but it's possible. So what you need to do in order to make that happen is to use your defensive cooldown just a second before the damage actually happens. Because many players use their barrier, their divine protection or any other mitigation tool much too late, when death is close already. So if you see a red paladin popping wings or a mage using combustion, a moonkin using convoke and nobody is in range to kick it, that is when you want to have an active mitigation tool running. And not when the damage already happened, otherwise you will easily die in one blink of an eye. On the other side of this, cooldowns like Divine Shield or the really big mitigation tools that can single-handedly keep you alive against a full arsenal of enemy assault should be capped until you really have no other choice than to use it. But take care, because within a global cooldown or when being interrupted or silenced with the shared magic class element, using them is impossible, so be careful when casting something or smashing in offensive attacks mindlessly. Often your strategic goal is to force the use of these defensives, one by another, and on high ranking this often is your ultimate battle plan to force as many of these cooldowns in one go, that means when popping offensive cooldowns. In contrast to that, I want to emphasize on a topic that is kinda the counterpart of defensives, and takes away the uptime character of arena games for the first time since the early expansions. Where in the past couple of years, a damage dealer's uptime in the arena was required to pin down the victory, to make use of dampening or your mortal strike abilities. Uptime simply means that you're actively using your damaging onto at least one target while not being kited, crowd controlled or mitigated by heavy defensives that you smash in your offensive cooldowns without a reason. While still being a truly important factor in slow arena matches like 2v2 with healers on both sides, on many 3v3 or double DD combos or in battlegrounds, making a remarkable setup is way more efficient in earning kills than having uptime. For example, in this match we had the upper hand when it came to uptime, but with one single CC combo and setup they could easily destroy us, because we were just too careless about their possible strengths. So even if your enemy may see not the dominant faction, this can easily be turned around in Shadowlands just by the perfect setup play. The best example for this is anything with a mage or rogue, where these setups are crucial to their killing results. But of course, not being in-game and not dealing some constant damage as a damage dealer that should exactly do that will transform into lost potential and missing pressure onto your enemy's healer. So always try to find a good balance between those two elements, while slightly favoring the first for reaching the perfect killing spree. And to achieve that, basically this means that you have to line up your offensive cooldowns with your team, or if your spec is able to push out a heavy burst by itself, just wait for the window of opportunity and avoid smashing in cooldowns without a battle plan. That directly leads us to another very important topic that many newcomers are heavily underestimating, namely crowd control. Since the early days of Burning Crusade or even vanilla WoW, a clean crowd control usage had been the distributing factor between bad, good or exceptional players, because most of the times using your crowd control with the perfect timing also requires to have true game awareness and control over the encounter with your enemies. So never try to play it low on this field, even if Shadowlands highly tempts to exactly do that. For example, yes, you could move into arena and try to one-shot your enemy with your burst heavy team, but when you start with a crowd control effect on the other healer instead, this will buy you a medallion to open up space for the next CC, or it will decrease the field of action and flexibility of your enemy's healer to react onto burst. The prime example here is a Holy Paladin. When he is in game and has all of his cooldowns ready, you will never be able to kill a certain target, because he can easily just use Blessing of Sacrifice to save the life of his mate without any difficulty. But when starting with crowd control, you may get into an advantage of pushing against an outnumbered team, opening up your field of opportunity before the enemy can execute their battle plan. So he may need to already push out some of his big cooldowns that may be needed on your team's second go, which could easily win the game for you. And especially when the fight is already in execution, crowd control becomes even more important. Rogue Mage combos, for example, cannot kill anything without a keen setup of crowd control, so that they are mostly playing 2v1 and get the upper hand as long as they don't fall to crucial mistakes or counteracting enemies that break their CC out of their usual battle plan. And when talking about broken CC, you really need to be careful with your AoE damage, or when spamming in ranged attacks that can easily break precious control your partner has worked hard for. And in many cases this works heavily against the advantage you would get from that single attack that broke it. So be careful and try to always line up a clean crowd control setup with your team. And that's it for now. Most other sections like positioning, combo setup or in detail info about certain specs in general should be talked about in the job specific guide for them. So stay tuned for my Disc Priest, Prot and Holy Paladin or Windwalker monk that I leveled up so far and played some arena with. I hope this video could help some of you in stepping into the arena, and I would be happy if these tips can help you working on your rating or enjoyment in battlegrounds or arena combat. And so much for now. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy and keep surviving in the arena.